Alrighty. So hi, everybody. Thank you for coming today. Mark, so grateful to you. One of the things that we do at Divorceify is really work as professionals to not only improve our skills as divorce professionals, but now we're really going to focus on improving our skills as business owners. Mark Acevedo is the founder and CEO of Innovating Partners. Innovating Partners works with small businesses to empower their mission, align their message to a target market, and achieve success and substantial growth. Mark has spent over 35 years in Fortune 500 companies managing sales organizations achieve excellence. Having worked for large organizations, he is able to translate their best practices into strategies and methodologies that are effective for small businesses, and that is his passion. So today, Mark is going to talk to us about value proposition and how we can improve and develop a compelling value proposition. He will walk us through the 3 important principles and guidelines that will enable us all to quickly develop a more persuasive value proposition. So Mark, with that, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonia, and thank you for having me today. Yeah, I kind of feel like the wizard in The Wizard of Oz, you know, when he's hearing all this stuff and it says, pay no attention to the person behind the screen. But thank you for that nice introduction. Yeah, we've been at this for about 2.5, 3 years now, kind of working with small businesses and helping small businesses develop primarily, what is their message? Are they in the right market? Are they aligned? What's the message that's going out to the customers? Looking at the things that are preventing them from growing their revenues significantly, and making the recommendations for some of those things. So I'm going to be sharing that with you today. I'd like to, I'll just share my screen here. I'm going to pull up just my presentation right here, and off we go to the races. One of the things that I discovered pretty early on is I discovered early on that there was a real compelling need for businesses to really understand what a value proposition is. Many people believe that the value proposition is inherent within their product, or even inherent within their resume. But particularly small businesses, what I have found, do not pay attention to generating a compelling value proposition. You're going to hear me use that terminology because compelling, it's not about having a value proposition, it's about having a compelling value proposition. And I define compelling value proposition as a value proposition that causes your prospect, your potential customer, to pause in their brain and consider you or your business and service. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. I just want to take you through just real quick, you know, just a little bit about what we do in Innovating Partners. Sonia had detailed it well. We really are working with small to medium businesses, anywhere from 1 employee to 99 employees, from, you know, $500,000 in revenue, $250,000 revenues to 10 million. And what we do is we really look for ways to help them develop new sales and generating new revenues. And we do that by leveraging some tools that we have that we employ. But in addition to that, we look at that leveraging experience and best practices, bringing them down to the entrepreneur, bringing them down to the small business. And for my partner and I, Michael, who my understanding got called to higher duties for this call. So he's he's down there. But the joy about doing this is we earn our satisfaction every day by helping our clients succeed. So that's all you're going to hear about us. You know, I'll just move this right along. But I want to tell you something, by the way. When people ask me what I do, I routinely tell them, well, I'll tell you why I do what I do before I tell you what I do. That last sentence, we earn our satisfaction by helping our clients succeed. That's why we do what we do. So I just wanted to be able to give you that. I'm going to start this. They say start all good speeches, right, with a good story. So here's a good story. I'm sure most of us have read Alice in Wonderland at some point in our journey. And I have an excerpt from that book right here. And the story is Alice is fallen into the looking glass and she's walking down when she comes to the fork in the road. And there is the Cheshire Cat with his big wily smile. And Alice says to the Cheshire Cat, well, which road do I take? And the Cheshire Cat, being half sarcastic, but also being very pointed, says to him, well, where do you want to go? And Alice responds, I don't know. And then sarcastically and rather smugly, the Cheshire Cat says to her, well, then it really doesn't matter which road to take. The reason I put this story out there is this is so much like so many small businesses, entrepreneurs. They think, I have an idea. I started with a process. I started with a product. Some people like that product. Hence, I have a business. And as long as I present this product or this service in this manner, I will have a successful business. But the truth of the matter is, if you don't know where you're going, well, then it doesn't really matter what road you take. And everything has to begin with your value proposition. People will only listen to you if you have a compelling value proposition. So let's talk about what customers really want, right? What do customers want? I want to call your attention to the very first point here. All customers want someone who can solve their problems, give them a plan, and relieve their burdens. Now, you as professionals, you are dealing in an area where you have vulnerable clients, you have emotional clients, you have clients that are going down a path that perhaps they've never been down before, nor did they ever envision themselves going down their paths. So what do they want? What do they really want? When they're coming to you, they're looking for someone who can solve their problem, someone who's going to give them a plan and relieve their burden. And you know what? It's true in your industry. It's true in any other industry that that's what customers are looking for. There have been extensive studies that have talked about this. Customers then buy products that solve their internal problems. A lot of times when we're talking to potential customers, we're talking to business owners of a $4 million, $5 million, even $10 million business. The amazing thing is that the business owners usually tend to be chief cook and bottle washers. And they're up at all times of the evening contemplating what do they need to do to grow their customer base? What do they need to do to operationally improve? Well, the same is true of professionals that sell services related to this, right? They are going to buy those services that solve their internal problem. Customers, and here's a great one, customer refer products or services that do indeed solve their external problems. Now, I'm a sales expert. I had spent 35 years in Fortune 500, and I led big sales organizations. And one of the things I could tell you is the number one easiest sale you could ever get, the easiest way to close business is a referral, because you already come with trusted advice, and you've acted as a trusted advisor. So it's important to realize that customers will refer products and services that solve external problems and solves their internal problems. And let me mention this last particular point you'll see. Nothing speaks clear about your credentials than your personal, compelling value proposition. That will do more than anybody else. I'll give you a good example. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I grew up in Coney Island, rather rough part of Coney Island. Didn't come from family that had any kind of means whatsoever. Went to City University of New York. I think my tuition, all up, all in, fully matriculated, was $750. Boy, times have changed, right? But basically kind of kicked and scratched and clawed my way through, right? And during my career, I've had the honor of working with people and managing people that had pedigree educations, Yale graduates, MIT graduates, Brown graduates, Princeton graduates. And I've always thought about the irony that they worked for me. a kid from Coney Island who went to City University and, oh, by the way, graduated with a liberal arts degree. All right. And I think part of the reason is that I was always able to effectively articulate my compelling value propositions in any type of position that I was ever in. And I've taken that into the private business world too and help people articulate their value propositions as well. So this is something that is rather important and rather significant. We did some analysis work and we looked at some of the what Divorceify customers want. You could see some of them there on the left, but what some of the keywords that started to come out here is they're looking for people that are going to be good listeners, prompt and responsive, and pretty efficient with fees, among the other things that are listed there. And then we looked at how do professionals typically describe themselves? And they describe themselves in the manners you see toward the right, right? You know, they're working with divorce, or they qualify or they codify themselves by their experience or some of the things they do. And inherently, it creates what I call a value gap. A value gap. Here's what the customers are looking for. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail. But here's how most professionals describe themselves. And this is where really cultivating a really strong value proposition comes into play at this moment. We also did some studies on the New York marketplace, and you could see some of the statistics there. And New York divorce lawyers charge on average between $305 and $380 an hour. The average cost of a divorce in the New York area ranges from $13,000 to $16,000. But again, most clients are expecting that divorce costs are going to be lower than $10,000. Again, there's kind of a gap in communication. So how are you going to be able to bridge that gap effectively? And I understand this is purely the New York market, which would tend to be much higher end. But still, I think that could be said in all cases. So how do we address the value disconnect that we have here? And we do that by building a compelling value proposition. So I want to share with you, if you're taking any notes, or if anybody wants, by the way, at the end of this, a PDF of the slide, I'd be happy to do it. I'll give you my email address and I'll be happy to give you the slide sets for this. But I want to give you 3 key requirements of developing a compelling value proposition. If you have anything and you want to write it down, remember these 3 words: connect, convince, and collaborate. These are 3 words that are rather significant in building a compelling value proposition. Let's just jump into them. Let's take a look first at connect. How do you connect with your customers? How do you connect with your potential prospects? And the first thing we're going to tell you about is 2 really significant things: empathy statements and authority statements. What's an empathy statement? A statement that demonstrates that you care about your customer's frustration, or you care or you know about your customer's current problem or situation. I think we know the difference between empathy and sympathy, right? Sympathy is, I feel sorry for you going through that respective situation. But empathy is much different. Empathy involves emotion. Empathy involves the ability to say, I know what you are going through because I myself went through the same situation or a similar situation. When you use empathy statements, you begin to strike an emotional bond with your prospect, your potential customer. That statement of saying, I know, projects a caring and an experiential disposition toward your prospect or your customer. So empathy statements, and you could think about what they are, really become critical. Now, an empathy statement in and of itself is insufficient, right? Because as professionals, attorneys, CPAs, life coaches, whatever your respective profession is, you also need an authority statement. And an authority statement basically says, why are you qualified to solve this problem for people? Why are you qualified? And the best way to do that is through statistics, accomplishments, and testimonials. Now, what I am talking about here can be used in your interactive verbal communication with prospective clients, but should also be used in any printed media and should also be used in any digital media. So if you have your website, you should be considering these two type of statements in order to connect with your clients. Authority statements talk to the fact that you are a qualified professional, and other testimonials and accomplishments that you deliver quantify you as that professional. Now, here's where it comes together. Now you are an experienced professional that understands your potential prospect's plight. You experientially can talk to the fact that you've been able to help other people. You've experientially can articulate to them that you're familiar with the process. And in articulating that, you project an air of calm to your client to calm their insecurities and their fears. And there's no doubt about the fact that the clientele that you're dealing with are coming to you with real fears, real emotions, real insecurities about the future. Now, I will state with you, an empathy statement without authority statement, it doesn't carry credibility. If I wanted to enter your industry and just solely walked in and said, oh, I went through something similar, but I didn't have the qualifiers, the credentials, who's going to entrust themselves to me? Nobody. The converse of that is true as well. Remember that authority statements without empathy, that's just bragging. You're just putting stuff out there. And let me tell you, when you do that, by the way, you don't create the emotional bond with the prospect or the customer. And when you don't create that emotional bond with the prospect of the customer, what you usually hear back from the customer is, okay, I'll get back to you. I'm talking to a few other people. I'll let you know in 2 or 3 days. That says that you basically just presented a whole bunch of facts. Customer is processing that fact, and now you become a commodity. And ideally, that's not where you want to be. Remember one important fact when you're talking to a prospect or a potential client. Remember this. You are not their hero. You're not the hero. Everybody has a story. You are not the hero of their story. What you need to be to your potential client is you need to be the guide. You're the guide that's going to guide them along the path because you know the path. And by knowing the path, you know the potential pitfalls. And because you know the potential pitfalls, you're going to be able to safely guide your customer around those pitfalls and get them where they need to be. So the first most important element in building a compelling value proposition is to make sure that you connect with your clients. And connecting with that clients involves both empathy and authority. Let's look at the next one. How do you convince clients? Well, there's several things that you need to do, and I'm going to tell you that these 4 things are all very, very critical. Number 1, we talked about your potential clients coming to you in a state of vulnerability, in a state of being unsure what the future holds. And now that you've been able to connect with them, you've been able to strike that emotional bond with them. And can I qualify something up front? I want to be clear with this. When I talk about creating emotional bond, I am not talking about manipulation. Please understand this. This isn't, we're not on a used car parking lot now, and you're trying to persuade the client to buy that, that 2000 car that has a 200,000 miles, and you're trying to convince them it was owned by a little old lady who only drove to church. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is working with integrity. And I'm just making the assumption that all of you are professionals and all of you do indeed, work with integrity. So please don't misconstrue when I talk about building that emotional connection and that emotional bond. I'm saying it as people of integrity. But now that you've built that emotional bond with that client, the client's going to be looking for certain things. Number one, you must be able to convince them that you, your company, your service, that you're the maximum return on investment. You are for them the best value. Now, I'm going to give you something very easy to remember. If you confuse, you lose. In other words, if you confuse them with your messaging, you will lose the client. And so to convince them that you are the maximum return on investment, be clear, be direct, use simple and direct language. So that's one of the things. Number two, you need to be able to convince them that the risks of doing business with you are totally acceptable. Articulate for your client or your potential client, what does success look like? Give them a vision of what everything is going to look like at the end of the process. Help them envision what it is that they're going to be free from and how their life is going to be able to do that. So you need to be able to articulate to them that the risk of doing business with you are acceptable. You want to be able to persuade them that your business is the best choice. And this is where your compelling value proposition comes in. You want to leverage that compelling value proposition as much as possible. And lastly, you must believe, inherently, intuitively believe that your product and your product and your service is the very best. Belief, and this has been proven, belief drives behavior. I always say this, and it says poor sales results, and that's because I use this many times to speak to organizations that are struggling with sales. But I told you I spent 35 years in Fortune 500 world, and a lot of that was leading sales organizations. And many times when I was on a sales call with a sales representative, and that person was struggling to articulate the value, you could see the clients pull back. Their entire body language changes because they were not convincing. When you are convinced in your product or service, when you are convinced, if you're a sole proprietor, that you are the best, let me tell you something, that exudes itself in your presentation. And that is going to enable you to convince your clients. So think about your prospective client now. You've built that emotional connection with them. You've demonstrated empathy. You've given them authority statements. You've combined them. Now you've been able to convince them that you are the best value, which goes to the third element. And the third element here is you want to collaborate with them. This is a big thing. A lot of times we engage clients and we tell clients, okay, this is how it's going to be done. As you begin to build your value proposition, as you begin to paint it in your stories, on your websites, on your LinkedIn, and all of the others, collaboration becomes key. And successful people collaborate, and they're perceived to be responsive and proactive. And we talk about building a value proposition. And again, I go back to these three words: connect, convince, collaborate. What does it mean to collaborate? Well, it means you're staying aligned to your client's goals. I don't know if you do this in your respective businesses, but I don't know if when you first engage with a client or if you're in a a potential meeting with a potential client, if you even ask your clients what their goals are. But once you've captured those goals, you want to maintain and stay aligned to those goals, right? You want to work on those mutual goals. And as the client sees that you are reiterating their interests, well, they're going to believe that you're going to be integral to their overall success of what they're looking to accomplish in the process. So that's what I mean when I say successful people collaborate through. Your value proposition should reflect some of these things. How you collaborate with your customers, how you just don't come in and say, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do the other thing. How the partnership, and as a guide, how you are going to guide your clients along this process. So building that value proposition involves connecting, convincing, and collaborating. But it also involves 3 other critical questions. And these are questions that you need to answer, both if you're in a one-on-one with somebody, again, in your digital media or your print media. And again, if you want the presentation, I'll send it to you, but I suggest you write these down. You need to be crystal clear. Describe what you have to offer and how it solves your customer's problem. I think you all know what your customer's problem is. So how do you articulate that clearly? Number 2, how will it make your targeted customer's life better? So you know what your customers look like. You know the market segment you serve. How will it make their life better? How, by engaging with you in their process, it will help some of your prospective clients. Now, this is where we talked about where testimonials come in, but it also comes in where your experience comes in and what you've been able to do with others. So you must answer that question. How will it make your prospect's life better? And lastly, what do they need to do? Now that you've connected with them, you've convinced them, you've demonstrated that you're going to collaborate with them, what do they need to do to buy from you or to engage with you? And so considerations for building your value proposition. Do you clearly define what success looks like? Now, success may not be the right term for your respective potential clients, but what is completing the process, moving on with their life? Are you able to successfully articulate that too? Right? Your value proposition should be a clear differentiator. And there's another end. We always talk about defining what success looks like, or completion of the process, or the end of the process. But you always need to remind customers of what doing nothing looks like as well. I'm sure that you'll find a lot of prospective clients are very price oriented. So maybe they're going to go with the attorney that has the billboard on the sign of the highway that says, divorce is $99. Who knows? But you got to be able to be clear to define what doing nothing looks like, or doing a minimalist effort. By defining success, you contrast it with what a lesser value could give them. What real life examples can you cite? What testimonials can you leverage? And paint a picture of how your customer's life would be easier by engaging you or your company. Remember, you're not the hero. You are the guide, and you're a professional at what you do. So you're the one who could navigate your potential clients safely through this process and make the emotional appeal. And again, that goes back to connecting with the client. But always remember that buying, whether they're selecting you as an attorney, as a CPA, as a life coach, every time they make that decision, it is an emotional decision. By developing a compelling value proposition, you are able to disarm some of those fears, People are always going to come to you with fear, uncertainty, and doubt. There's an acronym, FUD. You can remember it for yourself. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That's your clientele. They're coming to you with some of those things. Maybe they're even coming to you with animosity. And maybe the animosity is a front for some of that fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But by building a compelling value proposition in both cases, you are able to disarm them, kind of calm the fears a little bit, and then navigate them safely through this process. I always remember this. My father told me this all the time. You never get a second chance to make a good first impression. And so we talked about connecting with the clients. There's your first impression, right? Convincing the clients, collaborating with the clients, describing clearly what you have to offer, how it's going to make their life better. What does success look like? So now you got the client and now you're engaging based on that value proposition. What's your onboarding process like? Is it difficult? Is it voluminous? Is it involving, tons of papers and all the other different things? As easy as possible. You want to get your client to engage as smoothly as possible. Look at your engagement process and see how it is. I just recently applied for a refinance. My bank was purchased by merged with BB&T to become a bank. I've been with the bank for 16 years. I did a previous refinancing, and I just said, okay, we're going to go through this again. Absolutely horrible experience. That in underwriting, I called them up and I said, forget it, I don't want to refinance anymore. The experience was just terrible. Now, when I talked to the mortgage broker, it was great. It was just like it was the last time. When it came time to engage, it was disastrous. So you don't want to be able to do that, right? You want to be able to clearly articulate to your client what do they need to do to engage with yourself. But here's the key: simplify, simplify, simplify as much as possible. Now, I know a lot of you are in the legal process, in the legal profession, and the legal profession is litigious and it's full of paper. So I'm not saying you have a wave a magic wand and do away with it. What I am saying is look at your process. Is it smooth? Is it fluid? How much of that can you smoothen out for your client? So the engagement process is very fluid and easy to do business. So you end on a solid first impression. I shared this with you before. Belief drives behavior. And I tell people this all the time. Remember one important thing. You are the value. Let me say that again. You're the value. You are the professional. You know the process. Now it's about taking that value and developing that compelling proposition for that potential customer. We talked about belief, and you must believe in the value proposition in order to create opportunity. And as I shared with you earlier, your belief or your lack of belief, either one of them, or your indifference to your potential clients will either limit you, or your belief and your strong, compelling value proposition will be your greatest asset. It's that simple. Listen, these principles are horizontal in nature. It don't matter whether you're dealing in divorce or you're dealing in pharmaceutical sales. These are horizontal things, principles that apply across the board. So as I begin to sum up, let me just reiterate the 3 key points. 3 requirements of developing a compelling value proposition. Number 1, connect. Number 2, convince. Number 3, collaborate. And then the 3 questions that your value proposition must answer. Describe what you have to offer, what problem it solves, how will it make your customer's life better, what do they need to do to engage with you or to buy from you. Now, I want to share something with you. There's no strings attached with this. But for all of you that are attending this call, we'd like to extend a no risk, absolutely free offer. And that is, after you've heard the presentation, I'll take some questions in a moment. But we're offering all the attendees a free 30-minute, consult, and we'll review your value proposition. If you indeed have one today, we'll review it with you. We'll offer recommendations, things that you can do to strengthen your value proposition, or we'll tell you, man, you have an awesome value proposition. What do you got to do? If you go to our website at innovatingpartners.net, if you click on the button that says schedule a call, you can schedule a call. Our calendar will pop up. You could schedule a call. We'll do a 30-minute deep dive with you. We'll answer any questions that you have. Or if you prefer, you could call us. Our number is right there, 855-947-7205. I am telling you with all integrity and all honesty, this is a no risk proposition. It's free. We're not going to sell you a timeshare with oceanfront property in Arizona. This is just a free offer for anybody who attends the calls. So with that, I'm going to stop. I'd be happy to take any questions that anybody has. Let me open it up for any questions.